Good evening and welcome. Wherever you are right now, I hope you can let your shoulders drop a little, unclench your jaw, and allow the day to loosen its grip. There's nothing you need to solve tonight, nothing you need to chase, only a small pocket of time to rest in. If it feels right, take a slow breath in through your nose and let it out gently, as if you're fogging a window with warmth. Settle into whatever supports you, pillows, blankets, a familiar corner of the room, and give yourself permission to simply listen, to drift, to be carried by a quiet story that asks nothing from you except softness. Imagine an autumn evening that arrives early, as it does when the trees have already begun to thin. Outside, rain falls steadily, not in a stormy rush, but in patient, careful drops that know exactly where they're going. The windows are cool to the touch, slightly fogged at their edges, and every so often a rivulet gathers itself and slips downward with unhurried purpose. Somewhere in the distance, a car passes with a muted hush, tires combing the wet road, and then the sound dissolves, leaving the rain to do what it does best, make everything slower. Inside, there is a small candle workshop tucked between old buildings where the streetlights glow like softened coins. The shop has a modest sign above the door, hand-painted years ago. Its letters a little worn, but lovingly maintained. The bell on the door is the kind that doesn't ring sharply, only offers a gentle note when someone enters, as if it doesn't want to startle anyone. Tonight, no one will come. The evening belongs to the rain, the wax, and the calm routine of a person who has learned to take comfort in careful, ordinary work. The master of this workshop is there, moving quietly through the half-light. He is not in a hurry. He never is when he is here among the shelves of jars and tins, the baskets of cotton wicks, the drawers filled with dies and labels, and little tools worn smooth by use. His name does not matter much in this space. He is simply the maker, the caretaker of small flames waiting to be born. His presence carries a steady gentleness, the sort that makes the room feel safer, even if no one speaks. He wears a simple apron that smells faintly of beeswax and clean soap, and when he ties it at his waist, the knot is as familiar as a bedtime ritual. The workshop lighting is warm and intentionally dim, chosen to soothe the eyes. few lamps glow in corners, their shades amber-toned, casting puddles of light over the work table and leaving the rest in comfortable shadow. The rain outside taps at the window as if it's curious, and every tap is softened by the glass and the thickness of the air inside. It smells like autumn wood and damp leaves faintly carried in whenever the door opens. But mostly it smells like wax, honeyed, creamy, and mild, layered with something else. Dried lavender in a jar, a slice of cedar wood from a sample box, and the gentle citrus of bergamot lingering, where the master tested an oil earlier in the day. He begins the evening in the same way he always does, because repetition can be a kind of kindness. He washes his hands slowly in a small sink in the back, warm water running over his fingers, and he dries them with a towel that has been laundered so many times it has become soft as a well-loved shirt. Then he walks to the main table and checks what he prepared earlier. Clean molds lined in a neat row, each one waiting, a tray of pre-tabbed wicks, a small metal pitcher, a thermometer, a wooden stir stick, and a scale that sits quietly, ready to measure. He runs a finger along the inside of one mold, not because it needs it, but because it reassures him that everything is as it should be, smooth, clean, no dust. The first sound of wax beginning to melt is not dramatic. It is almost nothing. He sets a pot for a double boiler and fills it with water, then places a smaller melting pitcher inside. When the burner clicks on, the flame is hidden beneath the metal, but its warmth rises steadily. The water begins to heat, and the earliest hints of motion appear as tiny bubbles clinging to the bottom before they release and float upward in slow, lazy arcs. That gentle, watery murmur becomes the evening's second heartbeat. After the rain, he measures wax with the patience of someone who knows the value of small increments. White flakes and pale pellets pour into the scale's container with a soft, dry whisper, like snow settling on a windowsill. He watches the numbers settle, adds a little more, then stops. The wax has a faint sheen, like polished shell, and when he tips it into the melting pitcher, it lands with a quiet, cushioned sound. He does it in 2 or 3 pours, not because he must, but because he enjoys the rhythm of it. Lift, pour, settle, lift, pour, settle, each movement unhurried and exact. As the wax warms, it changes in stages that are soothing to watch. At first, the pieces keep their shape, holding onto their edges. Then they begin to soften at the corners, rounding out, surrendering. The top layer becomes slightly translucent, like thin milk glass held to a lamp. Gradually, the edges melt into each other, pooling at the bottom in a slow, glossy gathering. The master leans in just a little, not out of urgency, but out of quiet curiosity. He has seen it 1,000 times, and still it feels like watching something gentle wake up. The air warms by a degree, then another. The workshop doesn't become hot. It simply becomes cozy, as if the room has pulled a blanket up over its shoulders. The rain draws a steady line of sound behind everything, and now the faint clink of a spoon against metal joins it when he tests the wax's texture with his stir stick. He stirs slowly, keeping the movement small and steady. The melted wax swirls like pale silk, thick and glossy, reflecting the lamp's amber light in soft crescents. Each turn of the stick creates a small eddy that takes its time smoothing out again. He checks the thermometer and nods to himself, expression calm, almost fond. This isn't just work for him, it's care. He thinks of how a candle will sit on someone's table, perhaps in a quiet apartment where the evening feels too empty, or on a bedside shelf where a person reads a few pages and then turns off the light. He thinks of the moment the wick will catch and glow orange at the tip, of the first warm breath of fragrance that will drift into a room like a small invitation to relax. He doesn't rush because he wants that moment to be good. While the wax continues to melt into complete smoothness, he prepares the scent. On a shelf near the table, small amber bottles stand in a tidy line, their labels handwritten. Lavender, sweet orange, cedar, vanilla, rosemary, sandalwood, bergamot. He chooses one for tonight with the same attention someone might give to selecting a tea before bed. His fingers hover over the bottles, then settle on cedarwood. He picks it up and rolls it between his palms once, warming it slightly. Cedarwood always feels like an evening scent to him. Calm, grounding, a little smoky without being heavy, like clean wood after rain. But he doesn't want cedarwood alone. Tonight he wants warmth and softness, like lamplight on a rainy window. He adds a bottle of vanilla, real vanilla absolute, deep and gentle. almost as a quiet smile. He chooses bergamot because it adds a lift at the top, a brightness that feels like a small candle in a dark hallway. He sets the bottles down carefully, as if they were delicate ornaments, and fetches a tiny glass beaker for measuring. The beaker clinks softly against the tabletop, and the sound fades into the hush. He waits until the wax reaches the right temperature for fragrance, warm enough to blend easily, not so hot that the delicate notes will vanish too quickly. When it's time, he lifts the cedarwood bottle and unscrews the cap. The first breath that escapes is immediate and reassuring. Dry wood, a suggestion of forest, something resinous and steady. He tips the bottle and lets a single drop fall into the beaker, then another, each drop landing with a near-silent tap that feels more like a thought than a sound. Then vanilla, thicker, slower, its aroma blooming like a soft blanket. Then bergamot, bright and clean, like a gentle twist of citrus peel. The master inhales once, not deeply, just enough to confirm the balance. His face remains relaxed, eyes soft. He doesn't chase perfection the way some do. He chases comfort. He likes scents that make people feel looked after, scents that suggest a clean kitchen in the evening, or a worn sweater warmed by body heat, or the quiet of a library on a rainy day. He holds the beaker close to the wax, and when he pours the oils in, they sink into the glossy surface and then spread in thin, shimmering threads. He stirs slowly, and the scent begins to rise. It moves through the warm air in layers, not all at once. First, the bergamot lifts, a lightness that clears the corners of the mind. Then the vanilla comes forward, round and reassuring. Finally, cedarwood settles beneath everything, a steady bass like the low notes of a lullaby. The master stirs for a full minute, maybe more, because he knows fragrance needs time to marry with wax, to become something unified. The stir stick makes a soft, rhythmic whisper against the metal pitcher, SHHH, 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 like rain over leaves. Outside, a heavier cluster of drops hits the awning, producing a slightly deeper patter for a moment, then returning to the steady drizzle. The window shows blurred reflections of streetlights, elongated by water running down the glass. Every so often, a drop gathers enough weight to slide down in a slow path, catching light briefly like a moving bead. master glances up, and his gaze rests there for a few seconds. There is no worry in him, only a quiet appreciation for the way the world knows how to soothe itself. When the wax is ready, he prepares to pour. He sets the molds closer, aligning them with a small shift of his hands so that each one sits exactly where he wants it. He checks the wicks again, making sure each metal tab is centered at the bottom. The wicks are cotton, braided just right, and he has already clipped them to length. He presses each one down gently into place, using a small dab of wick adhesive, and waits a moment so they won't wander when the wax flows in. He straightens each wick with the care of someone smoothing a child's hair before sleep. There is a tool he uses for this, a simple wick centering bar with a notch that holds the wick upright. He places one across each mold, the notch gripping the wick lightly. The wicks stand like tiny, pale stems in a row of empty cups, patient and still. It is an oddly peaceful sight, these small preparations for light. The master's breathing remains slow and even, and his movements have the deliberate calm of a practiced craft. He lifts the melting pitcher with both hands, mindful of its warmth. The wax inside is a smooth, pale pool, reflecting the lamps in soft ovals. For a moment he pauses, letting the pitcher hover above the first mold. He always pauses here. It's the point where potential becomes form, where something invisible, an evening mood, a comfort, a gentle scent begins to take shape in a way people can hold. Then he tips the pitcher slightly, and the wax begins to pour. The stream is quiet and thick, like warm cream. It lands in the mold without splashing, rising slowly, steadily. The surface forms a glossy circle that expands outward, smoothing itself as it climbs. The master watches the level carefully, then eases the pour to stop at just the right point. He moves to the next mold and repeats the motion. Each pour has the same calm rhythm. Tip, flow, fill, pause, tip, flow, fill, pause. The only sounds are the soft hush of wax, the tiny creak of his apron as he shifts his weight, and the rain continuing its patient tapping outside. As each mold fills, the scent becomes more present. It doesn't shout. It simply exists in the air like a gentle companion. Cedar and vanilla mingle with the natural sweetness of wax. Bergamot stays near the top, faint but bright, like the memory of sunlight. master sets the pitcher down carefully between pours, resting it on a heat-safe pad. He uses a small cloth to wipe the spout so the next pour will be clean. And he does it with the kind of careful economy that comes from years of practice. When all the molds are filled, he stands still for a moment and looks at them. The surfaces are glossy and almost mirror-like, reflecting the lamps and a faint outline of his hands. The wicks are centered, held in place by the bars. Everything looks calm. The workshop itself seems to exhale. Even the rain, though it continues, feels like it has softened, as if it too is resting. This part requires patience, waiting for the wax to cool slowly, evenly. The master doesn't try to hurry it. He knows that rushing a candle can lead to imperfections, sinkholes, uneven tops, cracks, little disruptions that feel like a frown on something meant to comfort. So he creates a gentle environment and lets time do its work. He lowers the heat under the double boiler, then turns it off entirely. He tidies the table in small, quiet motions, putting the oils back in their places, rinsing the beaker, wiping the stir stick, folding the cloth. He moves through the workshop like someone walking through a sleeping house, careful not to bump anything, careful not to make sudden noise. Even the way he sets tools down is deliberate. No clatter, just a soft contact, and then stillness. The rain continues its consistent rhythm on the roof and window, a sound that seems designed to calm nervous systems. If you listen closely, you can hear different textures in it. The fine hiss of tiny drops, the occasional heavier tap, the subtle gurgle where water runs along a gutter. There is a small kettle in the corner, and he fills it with water to make tea. He chooses a simple blend chamomile with a trace of honeybush and waits while it warms. The kettle begins with silence, then a faint shiver of sound, then a soft, rising whisper as the water approaches a simmer. The master stands nearby, hands resting lightly on the counter. He gazes at the candle molds from across the room, checking them without moving closer, as if he doesn't want to disturb the cooling process with his body heat. When the kettle clicks off, he pours the water into a mug. Steam rises in a thin ribbon, twisting gently in the warm air before it disappears. The scent of chamomile joins the workshop's atmosphere, and it fits perfectly soft, slightly floral, comforting. He takes the mug to a stool near the window and sits. The stool creaks faintly, then settles. He holds the mug with both hands, not for warmth alone, but for the quiet steadiness of having something to hold. From the window, he can see the street. Wet pavement reflects the amber street lights, making the world outside look like it's been glazed. A few leaves have collected near the curb, stuck together in dark, damp clusters. The trees stand bare in places, their branches thin against the night sky. A person passes under an umbrella, their footsteps muted by the rain. Then the street is empty again. The master takes a slow sip of tea and feels the warmth move through his chest. He thinks in a gentle, drifting way about the many evenings this workshop has held. Some were busy, full of conversation and customers seeking gifts. Some were quiet like this, the best kind of quiet, where each small sound becomes meaningful. He remembers learning the craft, the early days when he worried about every batch, every wick, every scent ratio. Now the worry has faded, replaced by trust in process. There is something deeply soothing about knowing what to do next, about letting your hands repeat a calm ritual while your mind rests. When he returns to the work table, the wax has begun to change. Its surface is no longer a mirror. It has turned satin matte, a soft sheen rather than a shine. The center of each candle is cooling slightly faster or slower depending on the mold, and the master examines them with quiet attention, looking for signs of a future sinkhole. He knows the wax will contract as it cools, pulling inward, sometimes leaving a small dip around the wick. That's normal, and he has a remedy ready. He touches the side of a mold with the back of his fingers, testing temperature carefully. It is warm, but no longer hot. The room is stable, free from drafts. He likes it that way. Candles prefer calm, just like people do when they're trying to sleep. He reaches for a thin skewer and gently nudges a wick to ensure it remains centered. The wick centering bar keeps it upright, but he still checks, the way a caring person checks a blanket tucked around someone's shoulders. As the wax continues to cool, the workshop becomes even quieter. The double boiler has stopped murmuring now that the heat is off. The only consistent sound is rain, and occasionally the subtle tick of the building settling. Somewhere in the walls, pipes make a tiny, sleepy noise as water moves through them. The master's movements are now minimal. He waits, and in waiting he seems content. He is not bored, he is present. After enough time passes, measured not by a clock, but by the look of the wax, he prepares the topping pour. He returns a small amount of leftover wax to gentle heat, just enough to melt it again. This will fill any dips and create a smooth top. The process is the same, only smaller, quieter. He watches the wax liquefy in a thin layer, and he stirs once, slowly, letting it become glossy again. The scent rises briefly, familiar and soothing, as if the room is reminding itself of its own comfort. He leans over the first candle and sees a small sinkhole forming around the wick, like a tiny crater. He nods, unsurprised. With the small pitcher, he pours just enough warm wax to fill the dip. The wax spreads outward and levels itself, creating a smooth surface. He repeats this for each candle, moving down the row. Each topping pour is even quieter than the first, more delicate, like adding the final brush strokes to a painting. He takes his time. He always takes his time. When that is done, he leaves the candles to cool completely. This is the part that cannot be negotiated. A candle must be allowed to become itself, solidifying slowly, settling into its final form. The master cleans the last of the tools, wipes the table, and then dims one lamp slightly, leaving the room in a deeper, warmer half-dark. The light now pools mainly around the candles, making them look like pale stones gathered around a hearth. He walks to a shelf where finished candles stand in tidy rows, glass jars with labels, tins with lids, a few tall pillars wrapped in tissue. He selects one from the back, not for sale, but for the room itself. It is a simple candle with a mild honey scent, a familiar comfort. He sets it on a small side table near the window and strikes a match. The sound is brief, a soft scratch, then a tiny flare. The flame steadies, small at first, then brightens into a calm teardrop of light. The candle flame adds a living movement to the room. It flickers gently when the building breathes, when a subtle shift in air occurs. The light dances along the edges of jars and tools, animating them with soft, moving highlights. The master watches the flame for a moment, the way people watch a fire when they want their thoughts to slow down. The rain outside continues, and now it seems to harmonize with the flame, water and fire balanced on either side of the glass. He returns to the cooling candles, and checks the wicks again. The wax is firm now, cool to the touch. He removes the wick centering bars one by one, lifting them carefully so the wicks remain straight. Each wick stands upright, perfectly centered, like a small promise. He trims them with a wick trimmer. The snip sound gentle and satisfying, like cutting thread. He makes each wick the proper length, so that when the candle burns, it will be steady, clean, and calm rather than smoky and restless. He smooths the top of a candle with a quick, careful pass of a heat gun held at a distance, just enough to erase the faintest line where the topping pour settled. The surface becomes uniformly soft and even, like a quiet pond. He repeats this where necessary, never overdoing it, never rushing. His face remains peaceful, eyes slightly narrowed in concentration that feels more like tenderness than effort. Then comes labeling, a step he treats like a finishing touch rather than paperwork. He chooses simple labels, cream-colored paper, black ink, a small emblem of a candle flame. He writes the scent name in his steady handwriting. Cedar, vanilla, bergamot. Beneath it, he adds a date and a batch number. There is something soothing about giving a thing its name, about acknowledging it as complete. He presses each label onto its jar or wrapper with care, smoothing it so there are no bubbles, no crooked edges. It's a small act of respect for the object and for whoever might hold it later. The workshop now smells fully like itself. Warm wax, soft woods, gentle sweetness, and the faintest herbal tea note. The air feels thick in the best way, as if it holds warmth. The rain continues to rinse the world outside, and you can almost imagine the street becoming cleaner with every drop. The night washing away sharpness, leaving only softness behind. The master moves to the window and watches again. A thin line of water runs down the glass, catching the candlelight inside and turning it into a moving ribbon of gold. He thinks of the people who will light these candles. Someone might do it while reading in bed, the pages turning softly. Someone might do it while taking a bath, listening to the same kind of rain. Someone might do it at a small kitchen table while writing a note, or while sitting quietly with a cup of tea. The master doesn't know these people, but his work touches them anyway. That thought makes his chest feel gently full, not with pride, but with a sense of quiet connection. He tidies the finished candles into a tray lined with soft paper. The paper makes a faint rustle like dry leaves. He sets the tray on a shelf where the candles can cure, developing stronger scent and a more stable burn over the next days. He places them with enough space between each one, so air can move around them without drafts. He steps back and looks at the shelf, and the sight of the neat row of soon-to-be lights makes him feel the way a well-made bed might feel. Orderly, welcoming, restful. The evening continues at its slow pace. There is no rush to close the shop. He has already locked the door, and the world outside can do what it does without him. He turns off another lamp, leaving only the smallest pool of light near the candle he lit earlier. Now the workshop is mostly shadow, with warm highlights. In the dimness, everything seems gentler. The sharp edges of tools soften. The jars become silhouettes. The rain becomes a steady lullaby. He sits again, this time closer to the work table, and allows himself to simply be in the room. He listens to the rain, to the soft, occasional pop of the candle wick as it burns and settles, to the faint sound of wax in the lit candle warming and beginning to pool near the wick. That sound is almost imperceptible, but it exists. A tiny, quiet shift, a minute change in texture. The flame reflects in the window, so it looks like there are two candles, one real, one made of light. As the master's breathing slows, the entire workshop seems to slow with him. Even the scent feels slower, lingering rather than moving. Cedarwood's grounding note becomes the main feeling now, a gentle weight. Vanilla rounds the air like soft fabric. Bergamot remains as a faint, clean edge, like fresh air brought indoors on a rainy night. If you imagine this scent, it might feel like walking into a warm room after being outside, wet and chilled, your body relaxing as soon as the door closes behind you. He thinks about the day that has passed, but not in a way that pulls him into it. The thoughts arrive like leaves floating on water. A customer's smile, a small problem solved, an ordinary task completed. He lets each thought drift by without grasping it. He has learned that nighttime isn't for holding onto things. Nighttime is for releasing. The rain outside is releasing the sky's heaviness onto the streets. The candle flame is releasing light into the room. His own body is releasing tension into the chair. The master stands and makes one last quiet round through the workshop, like a gentle guardian checking doors and corners. He ensures the curring shelf is stable, that nothing is too close to the lit candle, that the tools are put away. He touches the work table lightly with his fingertips, as if saying good night to it. He returns the oils to their place, tightening caps with care so they won't evaporate. He closes drawers softly until they meet the frame with a muted, satisfying sound. At the sink, he rinses the last cup and dries it. The cloth makes a soft swish. He folds it neatly and sets it aside. He washes his hands again, warm water running over wax-scented skin, and the feeling is comforting, like washing off the day without having to scrub. When he dries his hands, he notices how calm his fingers feel, steady, capable, gentle. Hands that make things, he thinks, can also be hands that rest. He returns to the candle by the window. The flame has become more stable now, the melt pool established. The scent is delicate and clean. He watches the flame for a few seconds longer, letting his eyes soften, letting the movement of light slow his thoughts even further. Outside, rain continues to fall in consistent drops, and the sound is so even it feels like the world itself breathing in a steady rhythm. He reaches out and with a small metal snuffer extinguishes the flame. There is no smoke plume, only a tiny curl of warm air and the faintest whisper of extinguished wick. The room becomes dimmer instantly, but not dark. The street light outside and the remaining lamp inside still provide a gentle glow. In the quiet after the flame goes out, the rain seems louder for a moment. Then it settles back into the background as the workshop adjusts to the change. He stands at the center of the room and looks at everything one last time. The cooling molds now finished, the labeled candles resting, the clean table, the quiet shelves. He feels the satisfaction of a small evening well spent. Not a loud success, not a dramatic achievement, just a calm sequence of careful acts that turned raw material into something warm and useful. He knows this is enough, more than enough. When he walks to the door, he moves slowly, listening to the bell as it gives a soft note when he opens it. Cool air slips in, carrying the scent of wet stone and rain-washed leaves. The night outside is gentle, the rain steady, the street mostly empty. He steps out and pulls the door closed behind him, the shop settling into stillness. Through the window, the workshop looks like a quiet lantern itself, dim, warm, safe. He locks the door with a small click and stands for a moment under the awning, watching the rain. Drops fall in thin lines, gathering at the edge and dripping down in measured taps. The sound is soft and regular, like someone tapping very lightly on a drum. He breathes in, feeling the cool air in his lungs, then breathes out slowly. In his mind, the smell of cedar and vanilla stays with him, as if he carries a piece of the workshop's warmth inside his coat. As he walks down the street, his footsteps are muted by the wet pavement. The reflections of lights tremble in puddles. The whole world feels like it has been turned down to a quieter volume. Behind him, the workshop remains, holding its newly made candles in darkness, letting them cure, letting them become stronger in their own time. It will be there tomorrow and the next day, and for as long as the master chooses to keep making small lights for rainy evenings. And as you continue to rest, you can imagine those candles waiting patiently, each one holding a steady promise, warmth without demand, fragrance without intrusion, light without harshness. The rain will keep falling gently outside, washing the edges of the day smooth. The workshop will stay quiet, the wax settled, the wick straight, everything in its place. There is nothing you need to do now, nowhere you need to go. Just let your breathing remain slow and easy, and allow sleep to arrive in its own kind time, as softly as warm wax becoming still.